Welcome to Clause 9. It's all about performance evaluation. So in this section, it's all about how we monitor, how we measure, how we audit, and how we review through the actual standard itself. So again, let's dive into the standard and see what's actually required. So here we are in the standard once again. Performance evaluation has three principal aspects: monitoring, measurement, analysis and evaluation, internal audits, and management reviews. And we're going to go into these in quite a bit of detail. You can see I've highlighted here a few lines. And the reason I've done that is that I want to just highlight or emphasize a change in ISO 27001 2022. So you can see here that there are a number of very subtle changes which do have fairly dramatic impact on the requirements. So let's just take a look at what's being required under the first area of performance evaluation. Monitoring, measurement, analysis and evaluation. The organisation shall determine what needs to be monitored and measured, including information security processes and controls. If you're new to 27001, it's important to recognize that you need to evaluate the success of your information security management system. You can't just simply implement controls and then just sit back and think, well, I've done everything now, so surely we must be doing okay. That we didn't have malware before, malware protection before, but now we do, so clearly therefore it's a success. Well, no, you need to be able to demonstrate that you're monitoring the malware protection and that it's having the desired impact that you need on your organization. So maybe that is one area that you monitor. You monitor the success of your malware protection, that previously you had a number of incidents, maybe 2 or 3 infections and issues annually, hopefully not any more regular than that. But now you can demonstrate that now you've implemented your malware protection, that you don't have any infections. It could be, of course, that you can do that at a very granular level, maybe through email, web filtering, for instance. But the important thing here is to note that the new 27001 2022 states in the second paragraph that the method selected should produce comparable and reproducible results to be considered valid. So whereas in the past we might have seen on an ISMS that people would say, well, one of our objectives and one of the things that we're going to monitor is security awareness. Well, you can't produce comparable and reproducible results with that. So you would need to define that a lot harder. For instance, you might say in Q1 we had 50 people or 5 people or 10 people attend the training, and in Q2 we had 20, 30, 100 people attend. So it's increased by 20%, 50%, 100%, for instance. So what we're looking for here is a method to be able to demonstrate that you were here and that you've moved to this point here. You can see exactly what's required in the standard, who shall monitor this and measure it, when the results from monitoring measurements shall be analyzed and evaluated. So you need to be able to answer these questions. Have you determined that? Who is doing the monitoring? Is it the IT team? Is it the HR function? Is it you? So you need to determine that. And the results of this, as it states here, the documented information shall be available as evidence of the results. So whilst you may not have to document the process for evaluation, and I don't believe you should, and I don't believe you need to, what you do need to be able to demonstrate is that they are being monitored and that you can evidence the results of that. So that might be in a graph, it might be in a chart, It might be in a table format, but you need to be able to demonstrate that you are doing that. In terms of the next part here, the organization shall evaluate the performance and the effectiveness of the security management system. Again, that's actually two things. How well is it performing? Is it doing, is the training moving forward? Are people attending it? Yes, that's great. People are attending. So you've had 25 people, 30 people attend your training. Great, well done. How effective is that? Are they just sat on their phones? Are they not really listening to you? Are you listening now? How effective is that training? If you're monitoring your training, then the performance of that is great because you're saying that you've increased the number of people who are attending your training, but how effective is it? So you need to be able to determine that. The next section, internal audit. So this is where the rubber meets the road, as it were. This is where you need to actually go into your organization and find out how well your security is actually working. The organization shall conduct internal audits at planned intervals to provide information on whether the information security management system conforms to the organization's requirements, that's your requirements, and the requirements of this document. So again, it's been very clear now. In previous iterations of the standard, it just didn't have that one phrase in the front at the end of it. So it's the requirements of this document. So what ISO27001 2022 requires, do you check that? Have you audited against this standard? And of course, is it effectively implemented and maintained? So that's what your audit needs to confirm. In terms of the audit program itself, it states here, the organization shall plan, establish, implement, and maintain an audit program. So that's kind of almost, you could say, well, that's a repeat of what it's asking for up here. But not really, because what it's saying is that you will conduct internal audits at planned intervals. That for me is the key part of this first section. So it doesn't say they have to be, your audits have to be monthly. It doesn't say that you have to audit the entire management system all in 1 year. It just says that you need to have evidence that you've conducted internal audits at planned intervals. So it depends upon the size and complexity of your organization. But they shall be planned. You will establish and implement and maintain this program, and you will determine what the frequency is, who's responsible for doing them, and how you will actually report on them as well. So this is something that I do believe you should at least document in part within your audit plan. And we'll take a look at an audit plan in a second, just to show you how simple it is actually to create an audit plan. It doesn't need to be complicated, doesn't need to be complex. But it does state that, again, when you're establishing it, and it's different for ISO 27001 2022, that when establishing the internal audit program, the organization shall consider the importance of the processes concerned and the results of previous audits. What that means is that you don't just simply look at the standard and say, okay, I'm going to go from section 5 policies and then jump right to the very end and talk about technical controls, because we're going to start at 5 and we're going to work through each of the sections, section 6, section 7, section 8, and so on. No, what you need to do is you need to consider the risks to your organization. For instance, why would you audit 3 or 4 times the HR processes when you only employ 5 or 6 people? HR really isn't a major risk for you. You're a small organization. Perhaps more of a risk for you is the software development process. So you might want to audit that, or the supplier management, the supplier relationship part of the standard might be of a higher risk and a concern for you. So you should increase the risk, the audit frequency based upon risk. It may also be that you increase the frequency of audits and the intensity of audits because previously you've had incidents, you've had a major breach, maybe physical security on one of your sites has been a problem, and therefore you need to increase the frequency of audits around physical aspects of that particular location. So when you're thinking about your internal audit program, think not just this is what the standard is. It starts at section 4, it goes to section 10, and then we go to the Annex A controls, and then we work our way through that. Perhaps in the first year, whilst you're learning and getting to grips with the standard, that might be appropriate. But certainly if you are a seasoned information security manager, ISMS, ISO27001 practitioner, you'll instinctively know within the organization when you have done your scope, when you have done your gap analysis, where the risks are. And you'll know that actually we could probably move that section to the end of the audit because I'm more interested in this area because we have more risks and issues around this particular aspect. So think about risks and issues when you're putting your internal audit program together. But let's take a look at one. Let's have a look at how we structure it. I promise you, it's not really that complicated when we take a look. So here we are, actually in an audit plan. It's not too complicated. It's an Excel spreadsheet. And you can see here that we have still kept the old framework in as much as we've kept the old ISO 27001 2013 Annex A controls listed. And the reason for that is just very simply that we want to be able to get down to the granularity within each of these areas. So we can go into an organization or a client or one of our own companies and say, okay, look, we know that previously we had an issue around asset management. So we plan to actually do the audit in January, and we're going to redo it again. We plan to do it again unless there's a marked improvement. We'll do it again in March, and then we're going to do it again in May because we want to make sure that everything is tracking according to our information security management system. But the audit is going to happen in January, March, May, and July, and we can carry on in that vein throughout all of the control areas. We might say, well, actually, whilst we're doing asset management, we'll also take a look at supplier relationships. So we can plan the supplier relationship audits in as well. And you can see all the various sections in here. We also include in here things such as when is the backup restore test going to take place? Are we running any vulnerability assessments? What about management reviews, which we'll come on to shortly? And what about the external audits? With these tabs here, we do allow 3 conditions. And again, you can do this or not bother. It's totally up to you. But if we choose the C, it just simply means that that audit has actually taken place. And it should go to green. And that just means that the audit has been completed. So again, we can just simply say, well, that audit is now, or that test has taken place. We've done the audit for incident management. So again, we can change that to C, so it's completed. So again, we can see which audits are upcoming, which ones have been completed. If it's an external audit, that it's we change it to E. And again, that's just a level of complexity we built in, but it's a very simple level of complexity. But it very much allows us to be able to see what audits are going to be coming up in year 1. We have it for year 2 as well, and year 3, because as you all know, your ISO 27001 recertification cycle is a 3-year cycle. So we can plan these in. So if we're very comfortable with HR processes, we might say, well, look, we're going to audit them in February, but we're not going to come back to them again until probably August. And we can just put that in there. So again, we know when we're going to do that. We can help prepare the audits. We can prepare the auditee so that they know when we're coming in. And again, management has a good, clear line of sight of when audits are going to happen throughout the year. Now, back to the standard itself, if you recall, it said that there's certain things that need to be defined. Well, again, I'm not a fan of creating separate documents and such. So we have created something here, a tab, which has your operational planning and controls. So again, we just describe how we manage the audit process. We talk about the management reviews here. We talk about how objectives will be monitored. We talk about the audit process, changes to the ISMS, and we also talk about risk management here as well. So if the auditor is looking for documented information about, well, how do you do these things? How can you do it consistently? Well, we just have this document held here so that they can see that. But for us, the primary thing that we want to be able to show the auditor is this. It's planned, it's implemented. So with that, let's jump back into the standard and take a look at the final part of this, which is the management reviews themselves. So this is the final section of the section clause 9, management reviews, and it's a very important section in as much as you have to do management reviews. Now, again, it states here, top management shall review the organization's information security management system at planned intervals to ensure its continuing suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness. Does not say that these management reviews have to happen on a monthly basis. I would always advocate, at the very least, your management review should be happening biannually. That means twice a year, at the very least, preferably quarterly. But certainly in the first year, I would suggest running them fairly frequently, and certainly achieving the ISO 27001, you should be probably having the management reviews on a monthly basis to check the progress of your program. But once you've achieved 27001, it's really down to you to determine how regularly you want to have these management reviews. But my advice, at the very least, quarterly. That would be the best approach. If you do it biannually, it's okay, but it's probably not the most effective way to implement and maintain that momentum that you absolutely need. Now, what you should be looking for here when you're doing the management reviews is having an agenda. And thankfully, the standard itself gives us that agenda. It actually states that the management review shall include consideration of, and there's your agenda from A down to G. Put that in a separate document, talk about those particular aspects, monitor the success of your and performance of your management system by looking at non-conformities, audit results, fulfillment of your security objectives, look at feedback from interested parties, etc. You can see it, it's right there. So why would you choose anything else? You can have your management reviews as part of your board meetings, your other meetings that you might have, senior leadership team meetings. My only suggestion is to make sure that this is focused on the business rather than just one particular area. So don't have this with just purely your IT team. It should be extended and have as many people from the business as you possibly can. So someone from operations, someone from the finance team, perhaps people from facilities, compliance, that type of thing. It's not always possible, but that's your management review should be as broad as it possibly can. And the management review meetings themselves typically last for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half if they're run regularly. Anything longer than that, it's not a meeting, it's a workshop. So keep them on point, keep them to this particular agenda. And the results of the management review shall include decisions related to continual improvement and opportunities and any needs for changes to the information security management system. So track what the results are of your management review. You will need to evidence. Doesn't mean you have to have detailed minutes that, he said, she said, they said, this they said. It should include key decisions that have been made. And the way that we, again, track this is we have a continual improvement log. So again, any key actions, any decisions that have been made, we can track that on a separate Excel spreadsheet, which allows us to be able to go back historically and look at what decisions have been made. And there you are. The final sort of line in this is, the line that has always been there: documented information shall be available as evidence of the results of management reviews. So that is minutes or whatever it might be. Clause 9. There's a lot to it. It's fairly, again, a very short section, but a really important one. So look forward to seeing you on the final clause, clause 10, and you can see a sneak preview right there. See you soon.